What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and we're back playing some more 2v2s on Total War Warhammer 2's multiplayer scene. Today's map is going to be Glacial Lake, and I am super pumped for this battle because it was a wild one. I'm going to be playing as the Warriors of Chaos, going to be playing as Archaon, my allies, the Tomb Kings, and we're up against the Wood Elves and the High Elves, so more elves, double the elf action, and we're going to see if the Lord of the End Times can't run an absolute train on these units. So before we get into it, let's go ahead and do our usual slow-mo army breakdowns. First off, the first thing you need to know is I couldn't see any of this shenanigans. These units were Vanguard deployed and kind of behind this little hill here, and we could not see the Dryads. There's multiple groups. There's also Deepwood Scouts with Swift Shiver Shards. There are Waystalkers here with their heavy armor piercing. More Swift Shiver Shards who kind of like fire twice is kind of their deal, and they do a ton of damage as well. And more Way Watchers. And then also one Waystalker here. Looks like he has all of his abilities. That's very interesting. Let's go ahead and look at these real quick. Hawkish Precision. So armor piercing missile damage. As long as nobody's within his range, he gets increased armor piercing. The Eye of Kurnos, Potion of Speed, probably not necessary, and then the Arrow of Kurnos, his most effective ability. He only gets 3 charges, but that missile does a ridiculous amount of damage. So in addition to that, I also have out here on my flanks more Dryads, some Deepwood Scouts with the Swift Shiver Shards. The Lord for the Wood Elves, interestingly enough, is going to be an Ancient Tree Man who's kind of hidden here off to the side in this kind of like little pocket next to this hole in the ground where Krell comes out of. You'll see this like chaos symbol here. This is where like Krell's tomb is kind of in the lore. But anyway, the High Elf formation, one kind of solid formation here with some of their more mobile pieces, the Fireborn, the Dragon Princes. You know, anti-large is going to be pretty great against the things that I bought, and their fire damage is going to be good against the Tomb Kings. So I like that choice. And the Illyrian Reaver Archers are going to give them some options for skirmishing. And then out on the flanks here, some Wild Riders with shields, both groups. Pretty powerful unit, really heavy charge bonus, physical resistance, silver shields, and they also have frenzy. So against light armored targets, they are absolute beaters. And then 2 more units of Way Watchers and another unit of Dryads. So the Wood Elf player has opted to completely spread out and surround us. Really good strategy, and I like it. And the High Elf player, for their main army, they're going to have Spearmen intermixed with the White Lions. The Scions of Mathlon here, the Regiment of Renown, with their kind of unique abilities. Let's go ahead and pause it so we don't miss too much of the carnage in the opening stages of the battle. But the Scions of Mathlon with their little horsey shields. I just kind of noticed that. That's hilarious. The little water horse shields. Anyway, what they have is the aura of protection. So as long as your Winds of Magic is higher than 50%, they apply a 12% damage resistance bonus to units in an AoE. So I think at the moment, if we look at that, it's kind of hard to see because we have to zoom in on them to click on their unit card. But I think they're pretty much affecting probably just these 3 units here. That circle needs to be pretty much around the banner of these White Lions in order for it to be effective. So in a blobbed up scenario, that 12% damage resistance bonus can be huge, especially in conjunction with Alariel the Radiant. I think she also has, probably did not take them, but on cast, I think she can apply the Shield of Sapphire, which gives a static damage resistant bonus every time she casts, in addition to Life Bloom. But completely cut all of that to get her on that Eagle. Just has the Star of Avalorn and Earthblood. I can't say I hate that choice because it's going to be very cost effective in this battle. So lots of armor piercing and missile resistance on these White Lions. They're really good against beating down Chaos Infantry, especially if they're just fighting standard Chaos Warriors. Their stats let them trade very well. Once they go down to about 50% HP though, they lose their martial prowess and they become much worse, whereas the Chaos Warriors, for instance, will stay strong throughout the entire battle. And then I see 5 units of archers here, and I like the way that our opponent has staggered them, making them not so vulnerable versus, I took Archaon. So one of the abilities that Archaon has is a burning head. Now, I also probably would have staggered the infantry as well. I mean, if you're going to go through the trouble of staggering the archers, you should probably do your infantry as well. But a single burning head down this line would have been brutal. But that's just not the spell kit that I took. He also has a single Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, which is a nice choice. Good for sniping out large targets. And it's, anti-infantry spread fire mode. I think it's currently firing at my Chaos Warriors with Halberds. We'll probably switch targets to my Weird Spawn pretty soon. But just a nice diverse tool here in case we had gone with any kind of Hell Cannon shenanigans. It would be pretty good at sniping it out. It's a great anti-artillery piece. And then a Star Dragon here. So this player was a pretty big fan of the Star Dragon. I don't blame them. They're going to be good against half of what's on the field. And yeah, so that's our opponents. So for our armies, we had a pretty interesting comp. Let's go over the Tomb King's player first, because his was a build I don't think I've ever seen before. Some Skeleton Spearmen here expected to hold this entire flank, essentially. One unit of Ushapti, great anti-infantry units, good armor piercing. You stand them on top of some Skeleton Spearmen, and they'll be able to do the DPS while not taking the damage. That's kind of where they want to be. And the Tomb Scorpion also, a great infantry killer, and can be very disruptive. The units like Wild Riders are going to have a hard time. They don't really have the armor piercing necessary to get through its 95 armor. And the way this thing attacks is it dives in the ground, and it can make it very difficult for units to target it. But there's a lot of armor-piercing missiles on the battlefield. More Skeleton Spearmen, more Ushapti, kind of taking a flanking position around all of this, artillery. You don't see a lot of people take the Screaming Skull catapults. A very cool unit. Let's take a second to kind of look at it. Got these like lizard skeletons here with like dudes strapped to it, and it shoots like these magical projectiles. Looks like it's actually shooting some kind of like magical skulls here. But anyway, they have magical attacks, and their missile damage applies take cover, so they do apply a leadership debuff as well, which is pretty interesting. Any units that have low leadership, not going to be, the best versus High Elves, let's say, which is kind of what they're shooting at right now. But if you were fighting, let's say, the Greenskins or the Skaven, that leadership penalty could be pretty impactful. There's going to be some Ushapti Great Bows on the field as well. I see only one at the moment. Yeah, I think there's only one on the field. And, whatever they shoot at, they're going to hurt. Probably shooting at this Ancient Tree Man. That's a pretty good target. It's a big target. Their armor-piercing missiles, very accurate. So it would be nice to take him off the battlefield relatively soon. He also seems to have every single ability that you can take on him. Probably a mistake. Could have cut costs in a big way on him and that Waystalker, and probably afforded, let's say, another unit of Eternal Guard or something like that, even Dryads. That's one way of cutting costs and adding units. This was a pretty large, fun battle, so every single unit counts at that point. I see here we also have a Casket of Souls, another artillery piece with magic damage, huge missile damage, but unfortunately it often misses. I find it to be a pretty inaccurate artillery piece. It does have the Covenant of Power, so it's a constant, great increase to power reserves. So it's going to provide High Queen Khalida here with more magic, but she doesn't cast. Is there a caster on the battlefield? Please tell me there is. Someone's got to be benefiting from that. Well, no. I don't know if it applies to me. I'm actually not sure if that's the case. But High Queen Khalida here on foot, it's an interesting choice. She does have several of her abilities, though. She's going to be providing the Blessing of Asaph to one of the artillery pieces, one of the Screaming Skull catapults, rather, and also the Casket of Souls, but not quite to the other Screaming Skull catapult. Just not close enough. They needed to be more tightly packed, and not to the Ushapti Great Bows as well. So missing out on some of that value. You really have to almost stand them right on top of her. She's also got the Venom Wave, an explosive ability, and Tomb Strike, making her a much better duelist as long as she has that active. And let's see, we also have, there's a lot of units on this battlefield, guys. There's some Necropolis Knights with halberds. I like that they're deployed far in the back. If there is any type of Vanguard deployed shenanigans, they're going to be some pretty great first responders. They're more meant to fight large, since they are the halberd variant, but they're going to be good versus pretty much everything. Dryads aren't going to stand much of a chance against these pretty elite cavalry units. As long as you cycle charge a bit, they'll be fine, because they also apply poison in addition to their anti-large bonuses. And then on this battlefield, we also have a Necrosphinx, pretty mighty combatant. Without much focus fire, armor-piercing damage, Sisters of Avalorn style units, or multiple Eagle Claw bolt throwers, or even Phoenix Guard, there's not much on the other side of the battlefield from the High Elves anyway that can duel the Necrosphinx. The best they can do is maybe put the Star Dragon on it and let them duel it out and see who kind of comes out on top. I'd be interested to see that. I think a Star Dragon one-on-one beats a Necrosphinx, a standard version, but I think the Sphinx of Uxteth probably puts this thing in the ground. especially without healing or anything like that. Even though the Tomb Kings pretty much are guaranteed healing throughout the course of a long battle. 4 units of Tomb Guard here helping me to anchor this flank, and I'm going to be taking pretty good advantage of that, supporting them as well as I can. And now we get into my build, which I thought was pretty fun and somewhat different. So the core of my army is going to be based around Archaon, right? Archaon stripped down pretty heavily. You don't need to take all of his abilities. I would say take 1, maybe 2 spells on him. And this time I decided to go with the Piercing Bolts of Burning. I found it to be a very cost-effective spell at 11 Winds of Magic, and it almost always gets its value for me. It's very rare that the unit that you're targeting your opponent will be paying so much attention to their micro. If you just landed on that one, blobbed up unit, you'll get so much kills from it. So let's see what else he has. He has Frenzy, Standard Die for that leadership and melee defense bonus, as well as a Slayer of Kings. So I take this. This costs about 250 gold, something like that. For the cost of this and, Standard Die, you could basically get another unit of Marauders. And you know how I feel if you watch my videos. I would much rather have another unit than have, some abilities. But I think in terms of Archaon, the Slayer of Kings turns him into an absolute, monster of a duelist. Lets him kill large targets pretty much at will, and you really want that versatility on him. And I was trying to be pretty thematic with it. I took with him, I think I have 2 units of the standard Chaos Knights. These are the anti-infantry variant. I didn't feel like we needed, I think they're actually both anti-infantry, but the other ones, the ones with lances, have a much higher, I think, charge bonus and a little bit worse melee stats, if I do remember correctly. 1 unit of Chaos Warhounds with poison is going to be able to tie down anything that we're chasing. And I saw these units out on the flank. We're going to charge into them, tie them down. Just going to use the Chaos Warhounds to absorb the Dryad's charge here. And the Chaos Knights are going to countercharge, and we are going to crush them. And then what is Archaon without his legendary bodyguard, the Swords of Chaos, providing that Guardian aura, but also providing the apocalyptic charge. It's map-wide. But it says its ability range is 70 meters. Interesting. So it recharges if there's an enemy in range. So the charge speed is plus 24 and plus 24% speed. So anything that these guys chase really can't get away. They've been nerfed in recent patches. When they first were released, these dudes were almost unkillable. I don't remember exactly what the stat differences were, but they were pretty overpowered. And I'm going to be using them as a bit of a mobile goon squad to either engage the fringe elements of the Wood Elves or to get in the back line of the High Elves and see what I can do. But keeping them close to Archaon is going to be pretty key, as long as he may be in danger, because I do want that Guardian aura giving him that physical resistance. And they just look awesome. So there's that. My front line is going to be made up of a solid wall of Chaos Warriors. 3 units with their silver shields, their 100 armor, their solid melee attack, melee defense stats, good weapon strength as well. Just all around probably the most cost-effective infantry in the game. And then out on the flanks is going to be the Chaos Warriors with halberds. We make a line, from this part of the battlefield all the way down when you include the Tomb Guard. And that's going to prevent any type of, backline harass. I didn't really know how my ally was going to deploy with me, but I was pretty happy they sent these Tomb Guard off to the side to kind of help me out. And then up the center, I also have the Weird Spawn. Regiment of Renown Chaos Spawn. They almost never get their value. Because they're focused so heavily. They only have 10 armor. Let's take a look at their physical resistance for a second. 15%, really not enough to make up for the fact that they don't have any armor. And their melee defense is pretty pitiful as well. But their weapon strength is huge, and they do sunder 30 armor on attack, and they are, of course, unbreakable. So to get that sunder armor effect, all you need is 1. You just need 1 Weird Spawn, and you're getting that huge effect, potentially in a big blob of infantry. And that's going to be pretty impactful. And then I also have this Chaos Giant here, a unit you don't get to see very often anymore. They've kind of fallen out of favor, but they're super cost effective. 113 leadership makes them essentially unbreakable. They cause terror, and they have huge weapon strength at 600. If they need to duel, a giant monster, or just get in with a bunch of infantry, they do have an anti-infantry bonus. They can certainly do that. And that's what I'll be trying to do with them today. He's only got 30 armor. Yeah, pretty rough against the High Elf archers if they were to focus him down. but they're going to have a lot of problems this game, and I'm not sure they have the firepower necessary to beat them back. And then another super cool unit, one of my favorite units to use, even though, you know, they don't always have the greatest impact on this game, but I like to use them in conjunction with trolls because what they provide is an encourage aura. You know, they do magic damage as well, so anytime you're worried about fighting ethereal units, they're a pretty good counter thanks to that magic damage. But they also have 120 armor with silver shields, Vanguard deployment, which is like never relevant, never at all. Really high melee defense, and I think they have like somewhat above average splash damage. I think it's kind of how they make up for their low unit models. But essentially, they can keep your low leadership units fighting as if a lord was nearby, and that's kind of their great strength. And then last but not least is going to be something of a mobile goon squad that I put together with the Exalted Hero completely stripped down and put onto a Manticore, and then another Manticore here, a feral one, as kind of a buddy to try and, you know, potentially focus down a hero, something like this Ancient Tree Man, or perhaps harass Alariel the Radiant. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right, guys, now that I've talked myself into a winded position, let's go ahead and surveil the battlefield at full speed. Screaming Skull catapults going off. One of them is actually targeting the Ancient Tree Man. That's a bit of a mistake. Huge damage going onto the Fireborn there. That was brutal from the Casket of Souls. And the Spearmen are going to rush in, the Ushabti are going to rush in, so will the Tomb Scorpion, and they're just going to attempt to tie down these units here so that they can't get into the artillery. The Chaos Warriors advance, and they're going to have a pretty good time against these White Lions and against the Scions of Mathlon. You'll see there my Burning Bolts going to go down on those archers. That's a lot of kills, and Archaon and his buddies going to absolutely mulch through the Dryads and get right into these Deepwood Scouts and begin tearing them apart. The Star of Avalorn going off from Alariel the Radiant, hoping to keep her frontline fighting. We'll see if that works out for her. But the Chaos Warriors with Halberds are going to be excellent at taking out this Ancient Treeman, and they'll probably be able to kill these Spearmen as well when you add that all together. The Fireborn and the Dragon Princes have managed to kind of push this front line all the way back into the Casket of Souls and to the Screaming Skull catapult. But the Necropolis Knights with Halberds are getting in there as well. High Queen Khalida kind of needs to find a home. I saw these units back here and I said, you know what, if I don't try and deal with them, they are going to shoot to pieces my Tomb King ally, and there's going to be nothing they can do about it. They don't have the forces necessary to deal with everything that's going on. His Tomb Guard are going to be advancing and kind of helping me to push and overwhelm this flank. And seeing that I don't need to stick around and continue, you know, killing off these Deepwood Scouts, I'm going to be very aggressive with my cavalry, and I'm going to charge one unit kind of spread out all along this back line. My Giant and my Chaos Warriors have broken this front line. Go ahead and slow-mo this. Man, these White Lions are having a tough time versus these big burly Chaos Bros. Watch them hack each other up with axes. But eventually I think they'll chew through. I'd actually would love to do some unit testing to see who wins this fight, because they're pretty evenly costed if I remember right. But once we were able to get these Chaos Warriors onto archers, that starts to feel pretty bad because they have a ton of ammunition left online. And here comes Archaon in the background with his Chaos Knights, and they're going to be ripping through these archers who thought they were safe in this little pocket here. We also have the Necrosphinx and these Necropolis Knights kind of poised to do some work in the background here, as well as these. We have the Tomb Guard tied up with the Dryads. You know, the Dryads are a pretty good counter here. They have physical resistance and decent armor stats. They also do magic damage, not really relevant here. But they're a pretty good match versus these two units, considering how much more expensive the Tomb Guard are. And with the help of the Deepwood Scouts, they'll probably actually win that battle. But we are very soon going to be getting into the back line here. The Star Dragon has landed and has started taking this fight with these Chaos Warhounds with poison. I only have 5 of the Weird Spawn left. They've got 62 kills, but they were taking the brunt of that archer fire on the advance. And we're very close to shutting down this Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. As the Star Dragon, you know, poisoned, we're sundering its armor, I think. For a moment we were sundering its armor. It was down to 50, so we were getting that minus 30. But 50 armor on that is going to make it much more susceptible to all this kind of low armor piercing damage that's on, you know, that's currently surrounding it. Plus, you know, if it's poisoned, it's also having worse and worse melee stats. It's not going to be able to fight back as well. So Alaro the Radiant is giving it some healing thanks to, that life bloom. So lots of healing going off. Shield of Thorns here giving some physical resistance as well as weapon damage to the front line. The Scions of Mathlon are probably going to be losing that physical resistance buff fairly soon if she keeps casting at this rate. But I have so much cavalry that's going to be swarming into the back line. The Swords of Chaos are going to be used to shut down this Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. And then my other unit of Chaos Knights are going straight into this group of archers here. Meanwhile, the Chaos Giant is just crushing for the Chaos Gods. Here they go. Awesome charge. You hear blood for the Blood God. He sends those dudes flying. They don't really have the best tools for taking out the Giant. Lots of spearmen on the battlefield, but they got crushed pretty quickly. More casting from Archaon. That's going to send these archers routing. They had a nice little pocket they were still shooting from. And I disengaged my Manticores from this backline fight. One of them, unfortunately it went feral. And there was nothing I could do to stop it from rampaging. But my Exalted Hero, I was like, I can't let him die here. He's too strong of a combatant. And I'm going to take him and put him onto this Ancient Tree Man and see if he can't do some work. He has pretty big weapon strength at 460. But the Ancient Tree Man is no joke, especially considering the fact that it has spell casting, has healing. It's a pretty tough combatant. But Archaon getting in here with his magic damage, that's going to bypass some of the physical resistance that Ancient Tree Men have. And they're going to be getting in there. If we can kill him, that should trigger some pretty bad morale penalties. But Scroll of Shielding, plus 22% damage resistance, Power Stone, Foe Seeker, everything's being popped to try and save him. But my cavalry is just too fast, and there just aren't enough elements left on the battlefield to protect him. High Queen Khalida, fighting some Dryads here. We can watch her. I love the animations on her staff. It's like a living snake that shoots out and strikes people. Looks like the artillery is mostly offline. Yeah, and they're still getting dumpstered from the background from these Way Watchers. I tried to snipe out this Waystalker with my Exalted Hero, but he's not really a pushover in melee. You kind of have to respect him. The Ushapti are going to be grinding up these Wild Riders with shields. They're meant to fight infantry, and they're not going to have the best time versus these Ushapti, who are anti-infantry units themselves, but they are also, their armor-piercing values are much higher, and they hit much harder with a 72 weapon strength. Watch them grind. I love their attack animations. They are also taking shots in the back, though, from these Way Watchers, and that's going to be pretty deadly for them. I don't know if those are the summoned ones, or if those are the ones that are still on the battlefield from the beginning of the game, but I thought those had gotten kind of crushed. And at this point, I'm going to be using some of my units to chase off the High Elf routing units. I don't want them to come back. The Necropolis Knights and the Sphinx are trying to beat down the Star Dragon. He's poisoned. He can't escape. His leadership's dropping to negative 148. Yeah, he's gone. He's absolutely gone. And I think at this point, we're pretty much, nearing the end of this game. The only things left are the kind of fringe elements of the Wood Elves. The Dryads are still fighting. Like I said, they were going to win this battle, and they certainly did. The Tomb King Dead are piled high here. And that's going to be it. Boy, that was a fun one. So yeah, let's break it down just for a second. Check out the huge kills on these Chaos Knights, mostly on, High Elf Archers and Dryads. They did a very good job. 101 kills on Chaos Warhounds, using them to run down routing enemies. But I did throw them in, guys. I wasn't very conservative with them. I used them to pin Dryads in place. They took a bit of a beating from that. I used them to pin down the Star Dragon. They took a bit of a beating from that. And then in the end, they were still around to help us, do work. Our front line managed to make it into combat relatively unscathed. And, our Weird Spawn, they took a lot of damage, but at the end of the day, they were still there, with that Armor Sundering debuff. 89 kills on them, 92 kills on the Chaos Giant, who almost took no damage whatsoever. And our mobile elements, were really the heroes this battle. 152 kills on the Swords of Chaos, 125, 245 on these Chaos Knights, and then 108 on Archaon. We used him on some pretty selective targets, but his casting was pretty on point this battle. We could have probably dropped even as many as 2 more of those spells, but the targets were running a little bit thin at that point. We really needed for them to blob up and kind of, infantry mosh pits, and that's where we could have got the most value. Exalted Hero only got 1 kill, but I was using him to duel, other heroes and other lords, and that's kind of what he's good for, as a bit of a mobile duelist. Hilario with no kills, unfortunately. She died without getting a single kill. The front line put up a great fight, but ultimately got overwhelmed from the High Elves. The Dragon Princes got thrown into a pretty rough fight, but to be fair, they were in range of some pretty dangerous artillery from the very beginning. And I like the strategy here from Braun X. Could have been pretty devastating depending on the type of build that we both would have gone. If he had gone a bit more of a standard build with less cavalry, less mobile elements, and maybe even a bit less artillery, let's say just a lot of archers, which is kind of what you expect to see when someone takes High Queen Khalida. Had I gone a build, with a lot less heavy armor, something with just, maybe more marauders and some hell cannons and things like that, just some of the squishier elements, we could have had a rough time. Instead, we played kind of a no-nonsense, get-in-your-face type of style of play here, and we ran straight at the High Elves, and with a little bit of help from the infantry, we were able to completely collapse that flank and then wrap around with our cavalry, thereby crushing them and ultimately making them a pretty ineffective force on the battlefield. Very good play here from Godfather. Had he kept his Tomb Guard, near his own major, investments, near his Screaming Skull catapults and his Casket of Souls, he probably could have held that sideline for a long time. But that would have left me very vulnerable. We crushed that first group of Dryads and Deepwood Scouts right off the bat with our cavalry, but there was another group directly behind us that the Tomb King's infantry, dealt with. And had we had to deal with that, maybe we would have had to use some of our cavalry instead of getting into the back line and shutting down those archers. I would have had to turn around and then try and chase off another group of Dryads and Deepwood Scouts. So there was a lot of teamwork going on, is basically, I guess, what I'm trying to say. A bit of a sacrifice from the Godfather allowed me to be the aggressor in this battle, and using that mobile, hammer force of the Chaos Knights to absolutely roll up the High Elves in such a way that the Wood Elves, without that kind of solid frontline support, were just never really able to get the work done. And I think the Ancient Tree Man was perhaps a bit underutilized. I'm not sure how much healing he got done, but he probably would have been better off being deployed right in the center of the High Elf formation. And, between his Earthbloods and the Earthbloods of Ilario, they could have really kept those White Lions fighting for a long time. And I also think that perhaps took too many of the abilities and spells on the Ancient Tree Man and the Waystalker. And like I said, probably could have afforded another unit of Dryads just off of that by itself. And if you're fighting Chaos especially, you probably don't need the shields on the Wild Riders. I would almost certainly just take the standard variant. I think these are 100 gold each more expensive. So yeah, just add all that stuff together and I wouldn't even be surprised if you get 2 more Dryads and just get a full 20 stack. Which I would think is probably more valuable. 2 more Dryads on that battlefield could have made a difference. Just a small critique there. And then I think this build is very solid, but sometimes you need to be more active with your Lord. If you're going to take Ilario on an Eagle, the Eagle is great because it gives you speed. It gives you movement speed to run away, honestly, most of the time. But in the times where you can be aggressive, like against my build, you should be. You should find a pocket to let Ilario fight in melee, because at the end of the day, you'll be casting Earthbloods into that blob where she's fighting in, and she'll get healed and she probably won't be in much danger. And then perhaps just be a tiny bit more reserved with your very expensive cavalry in the future. And I could see that being great. Also, just a small critique, not against Dank Mean Burglar, but against the Star Dragon. So the Star Dragon is a very expensive monstrous unit. I almost never take it. It has huge stats. It's the most powerful monster in the game, I believe. Standard monster, not a Regiment of Renown or anything like that. It's also very mobile. It also has breath attacks, which I think I've only saw one used that battle. For a significant discount, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but for a significant discount, you can get just the regular old Sun Dragon. It still has 3 breath attacks, which will pretty much kill the same number of units as a Star Dragon breath attack. It's a little bit weaker, but it's almost as effective. And at the end of the day, if you're just using it to fight infantry and like Chaos Warhounds and stuff anyway, it's gonna generate the same value for you with much less gold investment. If you just take the Sun Dragon instead of the Star Dragon, boom, you've got yourself another group of archers. You know, one more group of archers with another 20 kills on it could have also tipped the battle. So it's just minor tweaks like that. I did love the cutting of the abilities on Alariel. That's pretty hard to do considering she has some of the strongest spellcasting in the game. It takes a lot of restraint to be able to do that. And kudos to my ally also for taking some artillery, some being brave, you know. I love the Necropolis Knights, mostly uh, the theme of them, as well as the Screaming Skull Catapult, but they're units you don't get to see very often in the Tomb King's roster, and I feel like that's a shame. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this battle. Hope you enjoyed my commentary and my breakdowns. It was a pretty fun one, and I've got one more to show you that was even more exciting than this one. I'm going to kind of spoil it just a bit here. It was an artillery duel on a map that's just asking to have artillery duels, and it was glorious to watch. Just all the flame cannons and organ guns and just the undead artillery batteries just firing back and forth, and it was pretty beautiful, and I can't wait to show you guys. But that's going to be in the next one, hopefully tomorrow. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. Thanks to these guys for being great sports. Thanks. I'm pretty sure that they subscribed, and thanks to y'all for subscribing. That means a lot to me. And for those of you watching at home, I hope to see you in the next one. Take care, guys.